Hi and welcome to Best in Tesla. So, if you think all OEMs are making cars, you would be wrong. They are only assembling cars. Pretty much every little thing in the car is made by a third party. Legacy automakers are only expert in combustion engines, the one thing that will not be in a car in the future. But one thing that will be a part of the transition to the future of EVs is software. Actually, software is eating up today's cars, and analysts think that more than 50% of the cost of making a car in the future will be software. Even Herbert Diess said himself that software will account for 90% of the future innovations in the car. Yep, software is the game. But the big problem for the old OEMs is that they are not software companies. So for us to expect them to just make great software themselves is like asking your local carpenter to make an operating system for you. But he will just say, but I'm a carpenter, not a software engineer. I can't do that. You have to ask someone else. But the old OEMs don't have that luxury. If they want to be a part of the future automotive industry, they have to become a software company, and fast. And is that even possible? We always talk about batteries and how they can't keep up with efficiency and production volume and so on, but will it actually be software that will bring them to their knees? Well, let's check it out and let's dive right in. So the old OEMs are already in big trouble. They see Tesla building electric cars 3 times faster than they are and are only speeding up. Their dealerships don't want to sell their cars and they can't get batteries enough to meet demand, and their batteries are more expensive and worse than Tesla's. And now the semiconductor shortage is fighting against them as well. In January, analysts forecast that 1.5 million fewer vehicles would be produced as a result of the shortage. But by April, the number steadily climbed to more than 2.7 million units, and by May more than 4.1 million units. So the automotive industry is facing a lot of challenges, but everyone is forced to continue the march towards zero-emission vehicles. As Soren Philippi, chair of the Department of Automotive Engineering at Clemson University International Center for Automotive Research, said, no other industry is undergoing as rapid technology changes as the auto industry. And that is not just because of the new and better technology, but also because there is a lot of pressure from the governments to make the switch to zero-emission vehicles. So the pressure cooker is on, because no one of the legacy automakers are expert in any of this stuff. As I said in the intro, the only thing they are expert at is the combustion engines, and the rest they have outsourced. And as software becomes a bigger and bigger piece of the car, it is pretty clear that the way legacy automakers have done it so far has reached its limit. As Herbert Diess said in 2020, hardly one line of software code comes from us. So the 100 million lines of code, yes, you heard right, 100 million lines of codes that are in an average car's software is coming from third parties. And yes, parties. It is not just one software company that is making all this software. The legacy automakers has as many as up to 50 software companies working on different components of the car. They make the little electronic control units, the ECUs, that control something in the car and write some software to that ECU and give the legacy automakers this little black box, so to speak, with the ECU and the software to make it work. And then they have maybe 50 ECUs in the car made by 15 different companies. This is not sustainable with the amount of software and the code base we will get in the cars. or it's hardly sustainable even today. Remember, Volkswagen started production of the ID.3 in November 2019, but because they could not get their software to work and get the over-the-air update to work, they didn't start deliveries of these cars before September 2020. And then they didn't even have the over-the-air update ready as they promised. Not surprisingly, when we know they have 52 ECUs in the ID.3s, with software made from maybe 10 to 15 companies that all have to talk together. No wonder this is so difficult. And as a survey of software developers across the automotive supply chain was asked how difficult it was to know when a code change in one ECU affected another, some 37% of those surveyed indicated it was difficult. 31% indicated it was very difficult. 7% indicated it was pretty darn close to impossible, while 16% indicated it was not possible. No wonder they have trouble, since 100 million lines of codes comes from 10 up to 50 different companies and controls 50 ECUs. No wonder there are a lot of recalls because of electronic and software problems. According to the 2020 Automotive Defect and Recall Report, 2019 was a record-setting year with 15 million vehicles recalled for electronic components defect. Half of the recalls involved software-based defect. Yes, they already have a lot of problems today, even before they actually produce a real smart car like Tesla. And firstly, just try to imagine 100 million lines of code. That is a crazy amount of code already today, and they are just getting started. And again, the old OEMs are not making this software. These millions lines of code comes from maybe up to 50 different suppliers, so they don't get the know-how and they need to start from scratch now. And the complexity is rising so fast they can't even keep up today. According to the consulting firm McKinsey & Company, software complexity in vehicles is rapidly outpacing the ability to both develop and maintain it. Software complexity grew by a factor of 4 over the past decade, but supplier and OEM software productivity has barely risen in the same time. Furthermore, software complexity is likely to rise another factor of 3 over the next decade. Car makers and suppliers alike are struggling to close this development productivity gap, and that is all without talking about full self-driving software. Closing the development productivity gap looks particularly daunting if, as Volkswagen chairman Herbert Diess said, software will account for 90% of the future innovations in the car. Part of the problem is supporting the steadily increasing code base with the current pace. Software maintenance of the existing code will consume all of its software R&D resources if the gap does not close. In some cases, the auto industry doesn't view total lines of code as a measure of complexity anymore, but the number of software personnel an OEM or supplier employs to meet current and future needs. Yes, this is an almost impossible task for the old legacy automakers, and especially because they are run by people that don't know anything about software, its complexity and its cost, and they think they can just throw people and money after it, but they have no idea how all of this works. Like Peter Mertens, former head of Audi GG's R&D and board member, stated in an interview with Clean Technica, the German auto industry gives their most critical new product, which will determine if they survive as companies in their existing structure, to the responsibility of managers who have the least experience and knowledge about their most critical part, the software. Peter goes on to say that what is needed is a way to weed out executives that are not fit for their position. Run a job assessment with all top managers of Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, BMW and Daimler tomorrow and ask them to code a small game or a simple but working virus, he says. If they are not able to do so, fire them immediately because they are not fit for their job. Yes, that is a big problem for the old legacy automakers. The leaders of their companies simply just don't get it. Where someone like Tesla is led by a software engineer, Elon Musk. He has been writing software from when he was a child, made a game as he was 12 years old, and continued to code with his brother afterwards, creating X.com and PayPal and much more. Elon gets it. And more than that, Elon has even worked the production line when they went through production hell. As Sandy Munro said in an interview after interviewing Elon, he was very impressed with Elon Musk, how he knew every little detail about the car, how it's made, how it's produced. Like Sandy said, no other CEO of the OEMs knows this, and let alone knows anything about software. And software is hard. You just don't become a software company overnight. I have a good example of how hard making good software is. I worked at a company that wanted to make their own operating system. We were not a software company, so we of course had to hire a software company to make the operating system for us. But even after 5 years, the system was still very buggy, and we still didn't have all the features that we wanted, and we ended up firing this company and hiring a new software company to take over and finish the software. But firstly, they had to clean up the code because the first software company had done such a bad job. No structure within the code, and the code was not very great. You can't make software do the same thing with 2 lines of code or 20 lines of code, depending on how good you are at coding, right? So they started figuring out what the different codes were for and cleaned it up and fixed all the bugs in the system. And then they continued on working on the code to get us all the features that we wanted. But this was not an easy task. It took a long time. Actually, almost 6 to 7 years have passed since we started, so some of the things we used in the beginning are now obsolete, and they had to change some of the original things again. And now it's 8 or 9 years since they started this journey, and they still have a lot of bugs in their system, and it's not all done. So just a pretty simple operating system, nothing too crazy, has taken almost a decade for a software company to make. And the legacy automakers kind of have to become a very good software company in less than 10 years if they want to stay relevant in the automotive industry. This is so difficult. So while the automotive organizations must excel on many levels to win the software game, attracting and retaining top talent is probably the most crucial dimension. Because as my examples showed, just getting the software engineers to come and make some code for you is not enough. You need good ones. As I also talked about in another video about Tesla's AI Day, how a CFO of a German AI company saw Tesla's AI Day as a death blow to every other AI company on the planet, because now all the exceptional software engineers want to go work for Tesla. So for someone like Volkswagen to go out and get some of the most exceptional software engineers on the planet is just very unlikely. Put yourself in their position. If you knew you were one of the best software engineers on the planet, would you want to go to work for the leader of the EV race that is changing the world and forcing everybody else to go electric, helping them to make the world's most advanced software for the cars, and be working for Tesla, the world's fastest growing brand? Or do you want to go work for Volkswagen and help them make a working operating system and clean up all their bugs? Yeah, I think the old guys will have a very hard time attracting and retaining top talents, so they have to execute on making a mind-blowing new software in-house in less than a decade with average good software engineers. This seems almost impossible. Yes, once software was a part of the car, but now software will determine the value of a car. Just like I've said 100 times before, I will never get another car that can't do an over-the-air update. My Tesla Model 3 from 2019 has gotten so much better from when I got it, and even the Tesla app itself is getting better and better all the time. I don't care if you give me an Audi A7 that is so much more luxurious. I don't want it. It can't do an over-the-air update and get new features. It would already be outdated before I get it. But Tesla is a software company and has been for over a decade, and even make their own software that run their business, so they don't even have to license that through third parties. So their cost of internal software to run the company will pretty much be the same price if they are 100 employees or 100,000 employees. Yes, Tesla knows software, and we have seen countless examples of this. Like with the semiconductor shortage, all the old legacy automakers had no choice but to shut down the production lines. But Tesla got 19 new chips and just wrote some new software to them within a couple of weeks. This is how fast Tesla works and how good Tesla is at software. And if we compare the Tesla Model Y, the ID.4, the Ford Mach-E, we can see just how much better Tesla is at making an electric car. Tesla has almost half the amount of ECUs in their cars, and as Sandy Munro always says, every connection is a potential failure. And Tesla doesn't even have any of the old-fashioned fuses or relays anymore. Tesla only have the modern e-fuses, but all the old guys still rely on all the old technology, because that is what they know. This is the cheapest option for them because they have them on the shelves. This transition to EVs is going to be brutal to the legacy automakers if this is their thinking. They are led by leaders that don't know anything about software, which will be the thing that sets their car apart from everyone else. So if you have bad software, you have a bad car. Just like we see in China now, the Chinese people don't think the ID.4 is a very cool car because it lacks smart features. It is not a computer on wheels, it is just an electric car. If you're not able to make a smartphone on wheels, you are doomed. And to be able to do that, you have to become a software company. I really do mean this. This is like going down to your carpenter and asking him to become a software engineer. This is going to take a lot of time, something the legacy automakers don't have, because Tesla and the Chinese car makers are growing fast with very high-tech smart cars. So because this software problem is not something you can just throw money at to fix it, it doesn't matter if you have all the money in the world. You need the best talent in the world. I really do think that software will be a very big piece of the story of why legacy automakers didn't make it. They found out way too late what they needed to do, and that was to change their whole company into something completely different. And that will be their downfall, as so many other disrupted industries before them. And thank you for watching. And until next time, take care out there and be nice.